Hello, welcome to Yellow Door Urban Homestead. I am Asia and I'm an urban gardener growing in a small space in my backyard. I grow in raised beds, I use the no-dig method, and I also use bags. Today I'm going to do a garden tour. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Let's get right on into it. Before we get started, I also wanted to say thank you so much to Sophie for sending me the Ball Cannon book. I cannot wait to hop into this and share what I decide to use out of this book. I have looked at it a little bit, and so I saw some sauce recipes that I like to make. I've seen some jelly or jam recipes that I would like to make. So I really do appreciate you sending me this. Thank you so much, Sophie. We normally start the garden tours at the beginning of the garden, but today we're gonna start in the back, over by the compost pile. We're gonna start with the flower bed because I have cleaned that out. The flower bed was beautiful in its season when everything was blooming, even the cool season plants. But we have been in like the 90s for days now, probably about 2 weeks. And so things have started to die off, like my bachelor's button, my snapdragons. So I went through this section and I cleared everything out except for the things that should continue to bloom, such as my dahlias and my zinnias, which I absolutely love. Hoping to see my asters soon. They are like beautiful flowers. And I'm also hoping to get more dahlia blooms at this point, now that I've cleared this bed out and they have less competition. So a lot of the reason why I didn't do a lot of garden tours down this way is because the walkway was kind of covered. The nasturtiums were in the walkway, the calendula was in the walkway, but now you see I have a clear path through to the flower bed. These are the snapdragons, which I've cut back, and they're also dying as well, but you can also now see the soil underneath. I probably should think about doing some kind of mulch over here. If you remember, this was a carpet of calendula and it had started to just kind of vine. So I've cut all of the calendula back, and you can see right here it's starting to send up new shoots from the roots that I left down in the ground. And so those should start to grow back. I've also started more calendula just to kind of fill in this space. There were all kinds of other flowers in here, like bachelor's buttons. I think I might have had a few poppies. And so now I can see where my extra space is. And so I have started more calendula. This is an aster, and they are very, very pretty. This is another aster. There's an aster right down there. And so I'm just waiting for those to bloom because I love them. Look at that dahlia. It's a beautiful, beautiful dahlia. There's zinnias all the way across the back of this. And you wouldn't have been able to tell that before because there was so many other things in here, hollyhocks and things that grow really big. We have more dahlia blooms. That's a small one, but it's a bloom nonetheless. There's a little bit of milkweed back here from last year, the echinacea, which I probably did hid that and let it grow back again. And there's a zinnia about to make its space into the world. You can propagate zinnias by cutting right at a leaf node and putting it in some water, and they will propagate themselves and give you more zinnias. There's more zinnias there. There's a few sunflowers. That sunflower self-sowed itself in the bed. And so I have tied these things up so that they don't fall over. And so soon I'm hoping just to have a whole bunch of blooms in this area of pretty large flowers that I can use for cutting. Another section of the garden that I don't really pay much attention to and I don't talk about, I just kind of point it out when I'm doing my garden tours, are the back of these two raised beds. And they are, they mirror each other. There's basil, which this basil is getting really big. This is a large leaf basil. It smells so good. And then there are supposedly determinate tomatoes, but I'm gonna show you, these tomatoes are starting to grow back again, which is kind of awesome. So right here you have flowers, and I do a little bit of self-pollination or hand pollination, whatever you want to call it. There are plenty of bees back here, but they focus on the larger things. But let me show you right there. That's a whole new set of tomatoes that has grown within this last week, and I am pretty excited about that. And there's another one growing right there. There's one there. So thankfully, I've gotten my mouse problem taken care of. And I had left those plants, all of the tomato plants back here, I had left them uncovered because I was going to sacrifice them to the mice so that I could get more of the slicer tomatoes, because I want to make sauce, like I've said several times. And so the slicer tomatoes can be used to make sauce and salsa as well. So I was like, well, I think I'll get more bang for my buck if I make sure that I get enough slicers. So I had left these as sacrifices, and they ate a lot of them. But luckily, they're starting to bloom and starting to produce fruit again. And so I'm really excited about that. But also, back here are marigolds. This whole little section is tomatoes, basil, and marigolds. I'm not gonna plant them so densely next year. I am actually going to space them out a little bit more. While they are growing and doing just fine, I have had to remove quite a few of the leaves because the moisture, we live in a very humid area, and so the moisture was definitely starting to attack the plants, and so I removed leaves that looked like they were getting any kind of blight or anything like that. If I had planted them with a little more space, then we wouldn't probably be having that problem so bad. And so this is the other bed that mirrors the one that I just showed you, and you can see there are tomatoes growing here as well. And there are new ones coming up too. And so this bed didn't do as well as the other bed. But again, I'm pretty sure I planted them way too closely. I tried using the square foot method, but I think in such a humid climate that with tomatoes, you still need to give them a little more room. A change from the last time that you saw this video is I was saying that I was gonna leave this spot empty. This is where the beans were, but these are squash plants, squash and zucchini, and they normally have between 40 or 50 some days worth of time before they mature, and so I won't be planting out in that time. And so I went ahead and put in some squash and zucchini plants. I don't know which one is which because I did not label. And my beets, I never talk about these beets because they are not growing as I had hoped, but they are still growing, and so I'm leaving them. And there's a small beet there. There's a few small ones here. And so there's another one. My area, I could be planting beets right now. And so my thought is I'm just gonna leave them and see what happens. Maybe they'll start to grow and mature now. I'm not sure, but I'm just gonna leave them to see what happens. I've never successfully, my chickens, it's kind of early in the morning, and so my chickens are on a roll. My apologies for the noise. So yeah, I'm gonna leave those beets and see what happens with them. When it's time to plant for fall, I will more than likely pull them out, just because they've been in since early spring, and that's all that I have. These nasturtiums are still doing really good in my opinion. Normally for me, nasturtiums will have died out by now. I'm also hoping to keep some seeds. Let me see if I can find one right there. Those are the seed pods of nasturtiums. And so I'm hoping to keep some of those seeds. You can also make them into capers, which I don't even know that I ever tasted a caper, but it's worth a try. But they are very, very pretty flowers, and they do attract a nice amount of pollinators. Like I've said before in my videos, I actually eat them. They're a spicier, peppery type taste, so I don't eat a bunch of them at once, but I do like them. They are delicious. The tromboncino squash is still producing, so happy about that. I came out this morning thinking that I needed to help nature out. So I'm like out here with my little Q-tip because there's a male flower over there and then there's those two female flowers. So I came outside and I was like, yeah, I'm about to go and pollinate my tromboncino squash. But there were bees all inside and I was like, look at me coming out here thinking I need to help nature. Nature got this. And so this is the tromboncino squash that I was saying was kind of dying out. And it's not dying anymore. It doesn't look that like, you know, it's gonna die, but it is light green compared to this one. And so I've been giving it fish emulsions and making sure that it's watered well. And it has not died. It is still growing. I don't have any fruit on this one, but it's still here. And so that's what I want. Also, the other thing that I did is I put in some more tromboncino squash seeds on both of these trellises. And so I can get a second wave of tromboncino squash by doing that. So we're gonna move back over by the flower bed because I want to show you my pots that have my mint in them. And I'm thinking that I'm probably gonna start cutting my mint back. Like I'm gonna harvest it, cut it back, and let it grow again because it looks to be struggling. And so these are my mint pots. I do not plant mint in the ground because of the space that I have, and mint will take over. But if you look back at some of my other videos, you'll see that like this mint pot was full of mint, and it's starting to kind of die back. It's also starting to turn woody, but you can see there's also new leaves growing. So, and if you look down at the soil, you can see that there's more leaves growing as well. So these are my mint plants. That's an oregano, but I give that to the chickens, and it's actually starting to flower. That's another mint plant. Here's a lemon balm, which I need to cut back and go ahead and harvest that. And some of the leaves don't look that good, so that's another reason why I can go ahead and harvest it, keep what is good and whatever. It's also starting to flower, so I'm gonna come out here and definitely cut that back. I cut back the chamomile, but I had replanted a few more plants in here at the beginning of the year, so they're starting to grow again. Here's more mint. All of this is mint, and this one is also starting to flower. It's that time of year. It's good for the pollinators though. Moving over to the potatoes that the mice were in, and I just covered the potatoes back up. I did replant that second bag now that it seems that they are gone. So I put another potato in that bag yesterday. The rest of them are still growing, even despite Mr. Mouse. That's a potato that's coming from that bag, so it is growing. Those bags, I only planted like one sprout, and so I'm trying to figure out if that's gonna give me larger potatoes because it has more space to grow. So we will see. I normally plant like 2 or 3 to a 7-gallon bag, and I do pretty good, but I get a lot of smaller tomatoes. So I'm trying to, potatoes, I think I've been saying tomatoes, potatoes. So I'm trying to see if I get larger potatoes, just putting one piece of the potato in the bag, and then that way maybe I'll get bigger potatoes. So moving over by the compost pile, which is over there, and I need to flip it or do whatever I'm gonna do to it because there's food in there in bags from inside the house. We cleaned the quail area out, and so I need to flip that. We have dahlia plants back here. The top of this dahlia plant broke off, which is not a huge problem because dahlias sprout from the midsection or elbow or armpit, whatever people call it. So yeah, I should still get some dahlias off of this plant. That's another dahlia there. This is a zinnia, and this bed was full of things, and so this zinnia actually has a little bit of powdery mildew, but I tied this up as well. It's over by the sunflowers that are still growing straight up. And I showed you all that in a more recent video. But like, yeah, the zinnia is still, zinnia is still growing, but we do have quite a bit of powdery mildew, but that's because there wasn't enough air. Over here, these are the beans that we planted out together about a week ago. So they're doing pretty good. We do have a little bit of the beans in the back that's being eaten, and there's a little bit of leaf curl. But that may be because I was trying to make sure they stayed moist. I may have overwatered, so I'm letting that dry out at this point. I have not planted anything in this front section just yet. I haven't made a decision. I got time. There is the lemon basil that has gone to flower, and I'm just letting it flower for the pollinators. These are 2 scallop squash, which are going, they're growing pretty slowly, I think. But we won't worry about it. They may be getting shaded by the tomatoes over here, which, by the way, getting more tomatoes growing off of these plants as well. Like I said, I do come out here and hand pollinate them just to continue to get some growth off of it. And I'm very surprised that I'm even getting growth off of them because it's so hot out here. That feverfew is still in there, and I've been harvesting that. These 2 bags, I told you in my last video or video before last that I had bags where things were dying. So I went ahead and planted potatoes in this bag too, and I planted a whole potato with like 3 and 4 sprouts on it. So the bag will be fuller. Hopefully it will also have potatoes, larger potatoes in it, because I only planted 1 potato. So these are the kale. That way right here is the kale. The Swiss chard was in this middle section right here, but they didn't do very well, so it's fine. I'm gonna start some more when I start my fall seeds. And the zucchini is starting to perk up, and so maybe it is rooting into this soil. I don't know. I'm really gonna pay attention to that this year and figure out if I need to find a way that I am able to let my zucchini just run. But yeah, that is growing. When I showed you this in the last video, that zucchini looked sad and it was just kind of laying on the ground, but it is perking up. I've given it fish emulsions. I've made sure that it's been very well watered, and so it seems to be doing pretty well. I'm excited about that because even though I've only gotten 2 zucchinis this year, this has been my best zucchini year. I haven't been able to grow zucchini because I normally get squash vine borer. So again, I'm pretty happy about that. And now I'm gonna see if this having it on the ground makes it work better. And if so, that's how I will start to plant my zucchini and my squash. The cucumber trellis still looks good. My daughter tried a cucumber the other day and she said it was somewhat bitter. So maybe even with all of my watering, this is not working out as well as I had hoped. But I'm happy that the vines are still looking good. The leaves, they have a little bit of, stress spots, if you will, on them. But they look pretty good and they're not like really dry or anything. So I'm gonna keep watering them and I'm gonna keep pulling the cucumbers off. So you can see I have cucumber here, cucumber there. There's a bunch of little small ones, like there's one right here. But they are starting to look a little deformed, where they're skinny at the bottom and larger at the top. So we're gonna keep pulling them and harvesting them, even if we can't eat them, to keep the vine producing. We have our first lemon cuke, thank goodness, because I do love lemon cukes, and there's a bunch of small ones. Just hope they're getting pollinated. I think this is an Armenian long. It's the first one that I have had so far right here, so I'm hoping for the best on that as well. And the sweet potato vines are taking over. They're going right on down the side of the fence. They're also over here going up under the table, so I'm hoping this is a good thing for me. Look at that big bug. Is it a cicada? I don't really know. I think it's a cicada. But they've been out here making all kinds of noise. But you can see there's a little bit of damage right here, but that's the same spot that the damage has been all year. But the newer leaves are looking really good. So I'm not gonna worry about that. I'm gonna keep growing them. This is going up the fence and up and through the fence. Probably need to try to pull that out. I broke that, but yeah, so sweet potatoes are looking good as well. Over here we have our eggplant. It is getting eaten up by flea beetle, but you don't need the whole plant to grow the fruit. And so I'm still getting a good amount of eggplant production. I'm kind of hoping that it slows down because I'm kind of the only one who eats eggplant, but I have been like sneaking it into dishes that have potatoes and my kids aren't even noticing it. Hey lady. She's like, girl, leave me alone. So I am able to use them. I planted 4 plants this year because I know that we don't eat them as much as other things in the garden. But yeah, we're getting a good production off of those 4 eggplants. The nasturtiums are looking sad, but I don't want to pull them because they are still pretty and I don't really have anything to put in that space. So I'm just leaving them. There's more over on the other side. And then this marigold has turned into like this huge plant on the outside. And I noticed that the mice were eating those. And so there's another plant on the other side that's not doing well at all because Mr. Mice and his or her family was eating that marigold. Over here are more potatoes that's in bags. And I did dig down. Let me see if I can find it again without stepping on something. I dug down yesterday. This bag could maybe use some water. Yep, and there we go. We have a potato growing. So I'm just gonna cover that back up. Those potatoes were planted April 23rd. Potatoes normally take about, hey, Bertha, what's going on? Potatoes normally take about 90 to 110, 120 days to mature. And so April, May, June, July. So we're about at 90 days. But I'm gonna actually just let them die out. I'm not gonna pull them early. I'm just gonna wait for them to say, hey, we're ready to be pulled. The strawberries right here are growing well. So the greenery of the strawberries is growing well. We have picked a few strawberries this year, but there aren't a lot. I need to come through and pull all of these runners and get them out of the walkway. Here's the thing. This is where I need to get all of this up now that I feel like we have a hold on them. This is where the mice were coming out. And so I wasn't about to stoop down right here and get any plants up. There's also weeds in here that needs to be pulled, but I wasn't doing it. Although, like I said, not super scared, but not putting myself in the way that they could like run across my foot either. I came through this week while I was off and added an extra support to these tomatoes because they were falling over. They're really tall and long and they were shading out the eggplant. And so I came through, especially the Amish paste tomatoes. They are very tall and long. And so I came through, added an extra support to them to try to keep them upright so that they don't shade out the eggplant. But yeah, there are new tomatoes growing on here as well. Like right there, Amish paste, and a little bit of hand pollination for you. So if you remember, or if you saw the video, when I planted out the new bed of beans, I moved some basil plants, and I am happy to say that they are doing well. Sunflower leaf, that looks horrible, that we do not need. All of those basil plants that we moved are looking good. This one isn't looking as good as the rest of them, but yep, it worked. So I didn't have to lose my mature basil plants. And I'm gonna make sauce soon, so I need that basil. Over here, when we planted out the beans, I told you I was gonna wait because it was like in the middle of the day and it would have been too hot. So I put in some more squash or zucchini, don't know which one. So there are 5 in this bed. There's also a echinacea in this bed, which was here from last year. So we'll see how these grow. This is the bed where the potatoes were that the mice got. But I just threw the potato stems that I cut down up under in the dirt. And I have a few that are popping back up. One's right there. So I'm gonna leave them and see what happens because maybe they're regrowing some potatoes for me. And that would be great because like I said, I want lots of potatoes this year. So these are the other tomatoes. This area got really taken down by the mice because like I said, they were coming from right over here in the shed area. So these are where they were the first thing they would get to when they came out of the shed. But there are new tomatoes growing right there. And so, like I said, I'm very surprised that we have new tomatoes with 90-some degree weather. But there's more right there. There's one right there. There's one right there. And we have a lot of new flowers that's about to pop out too. So I'm excited about that. And this patch of stuff, that's a lavender back there. This is the raspberry going crazy everywhere. You can see there's actually some raspberries. I harvested some raspberries yesterday, but this cane is doing the best right now. There's more on this cane back here too. The roses have bloomed and they're starting to die back or deadhead. I think they'll bloom again. I think they'll bloom again before the season is out. There's some milkweed back here as well. I'm gonna try to get through this raspberry bush to show you what's going on in the orchard area. Like I said, there's some raspberries. That's that one is probably ready to harvest, but the raspberries are looking good. I am still gonna move this plant. It's hard to get back here. It really is. There's another piece of the raspberry. This space is definitely in need of some taking care of. I think this is a weed that I need to pull out. Could be a raspberry that's growing over here too. I'm not sure, we'll see. This is some parsley that's going to seed. I'm letting it go to seed. We have the Italian parsley over here where the seeds have dried. I just need to come out here and grab it, the whole plant, if you see it right there, and save those seeds. The oregano, it seems to still be growing and we've harvested a million times. I need to cut the comfrey all the way back and then let it come back up because it may be struggling in the heat. I cut this peach tree back, but it's coming right on back again, so I'll probably chop that a little more. I also chopped this peach tree and it's coming right back. Comfrey and sage looking good. There's more sage over here. And then remember I put a new Italian parsley in there. That's looking good. The thyme is looking good too. I cut that like way back, so I need to come back and harvest that again. More comfrey, more oregano. The apple tree, I did cut it back. I still haven't treated it, but yeah, it's definitely got a fungus. Someone told me what it was, I can't remember, but I'm gonna work on that too. You can see on the bottom, it's definitely some kind of something going on there. So I'm gonna try to take care of that because I'd rather the apple tree not die. Over here, we have the blue flowers, butterfly pea. It's going up the trellis. The loofah vine is still looking good, still growing like crazy, but not growing any loofah. The amaranth on the other side looks really good. The marjoram down here is looking good. I haven't used it for anything because again, I don't know what you use it for. This is rosemary that I started from a cutting. There's more thyme back here that's starting to grow. If you remember the last time I showed you that, it didn't even have that much. The rosemary I started from seed. That's kind of being shaded by the comfrey, which I just pulled off. That's one that I started from seed. I think that'll be very nice next year. We have zinnias over here. I don't know, it's just a pink one maybe. But yeah, the zinnia is still growing. The grapevine looks okay. There aren't many grapes on it. It's a muscadine grapevine. But if you look back here, you can see a few grapes. So yeah, I'm gonna do a little more research on how you grow grapes because there were a lot of flowers on here at the beginning of spring and I didn't get nearly as many grapes as I was expecting. Now that I have gotten out of that jungle of stuff, we're over at the pepper plants, and this is the red pepper plant that I had as large red, and I said I didn't know what they were. I think they're Jimmy Nardello. I think they were labeled wrong. They very much resemble a Jimmy Nardello. We have more of the cayenne peppers that are turning colors, and I picked a few yesterday as well. So I see hot sauce in my future. And all the way down the line, the pepper plants are doing really good. I'm really just waiting for them to turn colors. They're taking quite some time. Are looking good. I am giving them more time because I'm trying to see if I can get them to grow a bit bigger. That green pepper that we've been waiting for to turn yellow is actually looking like right in here that it's starting to blush. So I'm excited about that. That's a nice size pepper. And one of the peppers that I was really I'm really waiting to try is this Lasia, I think is how you say it. So there's like 3 on here, and I'm waiting for that to turn red. The golden Marconi, they are doing well. They get really big. Oh, I pulled that off by mistake. Shoot. They get pretty big, and I actually had one that was bigger than this last year. But yeah, they're really good, a really good sweet pepper. So I'm gonna take this in the house and sit it in the window. Eventually it is gonna turn colors. The newest addition is a cantaloupe, and I am working my hardest to make sure I keep this soil moist. Cantaloupe like moist soil, so do watermelon, and I think when this one started growing, it is heavy. However, it is small. This is a sugar baby. Sugar babies get bigger than that. And so I'm just letting it stay on the vine. And I'm watching the tendril. So when the tendril turns brown, I will go ahead and pull it and let my daughter eat it. I don't eat watermelon, but she loves them. But there are quite a few cantaloupe popping up on these vines. And so I'm hopeful that we get cantaloupe. Like I said, I kind of do pretty good with cantaloupe, but I'm trying to make sure I keep the soil moist. The beans, I almost didn't talk about them because they are lackluster, which I don't know why, because my beans last year on this trellis did really well, which is fine. I started beans on the other side, but you can see we have a few beans. There's still some flowers growing, but the plants themselves look pretty bad. I may pull them and just start new ones. On this side, I planted some more runner beans, and they are starting to run, but the beetles have definitely gotten to them. Look at the echinacea. It's very much a pollinator attractor. And I walked past it the other day, and it smelled so good. And I was like, oh, wow, echinacea smells really good. So, yeah. The asparagus seed pods are turning red. I probably want to maybe grab them. Apparently, asparagus seeds will grow, will drop, and you'll have 1 million asparagus plants, and I don't have space for that. But yeah, the asparagus is still huge. I cannot wait to eat this next year. It'll be my 3rd year, and I'm definitely gonna eat some. The cherry tomatoes just are not looking good. We got a few that's ripe, ready to pick. Some that are still growing past the trellis. Got some over here too. But I realized yesterday that my artisan bumblebee is dead. That's the top of it, and it is hollow. And so I'll be pulling that sometime this week. The one beside it is looking pretty awful too. But it just clears up space for me to plant fall stuff without having to pull things that I don't want to pull. The marigold and basil down here looks beautiful still. Like, I really like this area of the garden right here, so leaving that as long as I can. The daisies still haven't started growing back. I'm hoping that they do though, because they were beautiful. They were just too big, but you can see there are new blooms down in here. They just haven't started popping up. If you remember, I had cut back the coreopsis. That is starting to bloom again. We got one daisy bloom over here, and so I think they will. I think it maybe is too hot for them right now too. In the last spot, which I almost always forget, is the blueberries. I'm gonna cut them down to keep them to the size that I want them to be. I don't want them to be huge, but they are definitely attempting to grow. I know you're supposed to prune them at the end of the year and stuff, so I need to make sure that I watch a few more videos so that I know what I'm doing. And yeah, those are my blueberry bushes that the birds enjoyed the actual blueberries this year. But next year I'm gonna do much better. And a little update on the seedlings. Here are the calendula that I started. I did start these in the house. There are more Lacinato kale left. I think these are cucumbers that I don't really know why I started them, but I already started some. And there's a few squash plants left. These are the Brussels sprouts. Again, I just went ahead and gave them some food. So on the next video, these should look much better, but they are out in the greenhouse. Yeah, they're like really light green. But I did give them some fish emulsions. And these are the other seeds that we started together. I put them down at the bottom in hopes that they don't get so much direct sunlight and that I can keep the soil surface moist. Thanks for watching. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your week. This should post on Wednesday. I'm actually recording it on Saturday. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. And I will see you on Saturday. Bye.